The first time my stepmom demanded access to my army paycheck, I thought she was joking. I laughed because I couldn't believe someone would ask me to hand over money I earned while serving my country. But then she looked me in the eyes and said, "Your father built this family. You owe us." That was the moment I realized this was never about helping the family. It was about control. For years, I stayed silent to protect my dad's happiness. But when she crossed one final line, I walked into my father's room, placed the evidence on the table, and told him the truth. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 28 years old, and I never imagined that coming home after serving in the army would become the beginning of the hardest battle I would ever face. For years, I believed the hardest moments of my life would happen on the battlefield. I thought the challenges would come from long days, difficult missions, and the pressure of wearing a uniform that represented something bigger than myself. I never expected my biggest struggle would happen inside my own family. Growing up, my dad was my biggest supporter. After my mother passed away when I was young, it was just the two of us for a long time. He taught me independence, responsibility, and the importance of keeping my promises. He was the person who encouraged me to join the army when I told him I wanted a life built on purpose. When I returned home after my service, I was proud of everything I had accomplished. I had worked hard, earned my own money, and built a future through discipline and sacrifice. That was when my dad introduced me to Karen. At first, my stepmom seemed kind. She welcomed me into their home and acted like she wanted us to become closer. I wanted that too. I wasn't looking for a replacement mother. I just wanted my father to be happy. But slowly, small things started changing. Karen began asking questions about my army benefits. She wanted to know how much I earned, what savings I had, and what financial support I received. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought she was simply curious. I had no idea those questions were only the beginning. At first, I tried to convince myself that Karen's questions were harmless. I told myself she was just trying to understand my life after the army. Maybe she was curious about how military pay worked. Maybe she was trying to connect with me in her own way. But eventually, the questions stopped feeling like conversations. They started feeling like inspections. She would casually bring up my finances during dinner, asking how much I was saving or what I planned to do with my benefits. Sometimes she would make comments about how lucky I was to have steady income. One evening, while my dad was sitting across from us, Karen looked at me and said, "You know, you're in a better position than most people your age. You should think about helping the family more." I was surprised. I asked her what she meant. She explained that since I was earning good money, I should contribute more to household expenses. I reminded her that I already helped when I could and that I had my own responsibilities. That answer did not make her happy. She looked disappointed and said I was becoming selfish. Those words hurt because I had spent years serving others. I had missed holidays, birthdays, and important moments because I chose a career built around sacrifice. I wasn't selfish. I was simply trying to build my own life. My dad noticed the tension and tried to calm things down. He said we should all avoid arguing over money, but he never really questioned why Karen was pushing so hard. And that was the hardest part. I didn't want to create a problem between my father and his wife. So I stayed quiet. But Karen saw my silence as permission. And soon her requests became demands. I remember the exact moment when I realized Karen was no longer asking for help. She was expecting control. It happened on a quiet Saturday morning. My dad was outside working in the yard, and I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when Karen placed a folder in front of me. I looked at it confused and asked what it was. She smiled and said, "I think it's time you start making smarter decisions with your money." Inside the folder were papers she had prepared about my finances. She had written down what she believed I should contribute, what accounts I should use, and how much of my army benefits she thought should go toward family security. I stared at the pages, almost unable to believe what I was seeing. I calmly told her that my income was my responsibility and that I appreciated her concern, but I wasn't comfortable giving anyone control over my finances. That was when her attitude changed. She accused me of thinking I was better than everyone because I had served in the army. She said I had forgotten where I came from. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Because I hadn't forgotten anything. I remembered every early morning, every difficult assignment, every moment I pushed through exhaustion because I had made a commitment. I earned that money through sacrifice. I told her I was willing to help my family when I chose to, but helping was different from being pressured. Karen crossed her arms and said, "After everything your father has done for you, this is how you repay him?" I didn't answer. I just walked away. But later that night, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Karen wasn't just talking about my money with me. She had started talking about it with other people too. For a few days, I tried to ignore what I had noticed. I wanted to believe I was misunderstanding the situation. I wanted to believe Karen was simply frustrated and that things would eventually calm down. But then I saw a message on the family tablet. It wasn't meant for me. Karen had been talking to one of her relatives about my finances. She was telling people that I was being difficult, that I had changed after joining the army, and that I cared more about my money than my own family. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling something inside me break. Because it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the way she was trying to change the story. She wasn't telling people that I refused to hand over control of my paycheck. She was telling them that I refused to help. There was a huge difference. I had always been willing to support my dad. I had paid for family dinners, helped with unexpected expenses, and showed up whenever they needed me. But Karen wanted something different. She wanted me to feel guilty for having boundaries. That night, I decided I needed to stop reacting emotionally and start paying attention. My army training taught me something important. When situations become complicated, you don't rush in blindly. You gather information, understand what is happening, and make your move carefully. So, I saved the messages. I kept conversations where Karen talked about my income. I documented every time she pressured me or made comments about my money. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I wasn't trying to create a war. I just needed the truth. Then one evening, Karen crossed the final line. She told my father something about me that wasn't true. And this time, I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I spent that entire night thinking about what I was going to do. The easiest choice would have been to stay quiet. That was what I had always done. I stayed quiet when Karen made comments about my money. I stayed quiet when she made me feel guilty. I stayed quiet because I was afraid that telling my dad the truth would force him to choose between his daughter and his wife. But then I realized something. By staying silent, I was allowing someone else to control my relationship with my own father. The next morning, I asked my dad if we could talk privately. The moment we sat down, he knew something was wrong. He asked if everything was okay, and for a second I almost changed my mind. Then I remembered all the times I had defended him, supported him, and protected his feelings. It was time someone protected mine. I didn't start by blaming Karen. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed the messages and information I had collected on the table. I showed him the conversations. I showed him the comments she had made about my army pay. I showed him how she had been telling people that I was selfish and refusing to help the family. My dad read everything silently. The longer he looked, the more his expression changed. He wasn't angry at me. He was hurt, because he finally realized I had been carrying this alone. Karen walked into the room a few minutes later and immediately tried explaining. She said I was misunderstanding her and making a bigger issue than it was. But for the first time, my dad didn't automatically defend her. He looked at her and asked one question. "Why didn't you tell me this was happening?" And I knew everything was about to change. For the first time in a long time, my father wasn't trying to avoid the conflict. He wasn't changing the subject. He wasn't telling me to be more understanding. He was listening. Karen continued explaining that everything had been misunderstood. She said she was only trying to help me make better financial decisions. She claimed that she was thinking about the family's future and that I was making her look like the villain. But my dad looked at the messages again. Then he looked at me, and I could see the regret in his eyes. He finally understood that this wasn't about one conversation or one disagreement. It was a pattern. He realized that while he was trying to keep peace in the house, I had been slowly feeling pushed away. My father apologized for not noticing sooner. He told me he should have asked more questions instead of assuming everything was fine. That apology meant more to me than he probably realized. Because I never wanted him to fight with Karen. I never wanted him to choose sides. I just wanted him to believe me. After that day, things changed. My dad started setting clear boundaries about my finances. He made it clear that my hard-earned money belonged to me and that helping family should always come from love, not pressure. Karen and I kept our distance for a while. It wasn't easy, but I finally understood something important. Speaking the truth doesn't always create problems. Sometimes, the truth reveals the problems that were already there. And for the first time, I stopped feeling guilty for protecting myself. Looking back now, I realized the hardest battle I ever fought wasn't during my time in the army. It was the moment I had to stand up for myself with the people I loved. For years, I thought protecting my father's happiness meant staying quiet. I thought avoiding conflict was the same as keeping peace. But I learned that real peace cannot exist when someone is afraid to speak the truth. My service taught me courage, discipline, and responsibility. But standing up to Karen taught me something different. It taught me that I was allowed to protect my own life too. Today, my relationship with my father is stronger because we finally learned how to communicate honestly. We still have difficult conversations sometimes, but there is trust now. As for Karen, our relationship changed. We are respectful toward each other, but I no longer allow anyone to cross boundaries that took me years to build. The biggest lesson I learned is that family should never make you feel guilty for your own success. Helping the people you love should come from kindness, not pressure. Your sacrifices belong to you. Your achievements belong to you. And nobody, not even family, has the right to control what you worked so hard to earn. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is finally tell the truth.